without any further comments, I would like to just quickly walk through the program. We have our sessions are sort of like divided into 3 sessions. We have the presentation where communities are showcasing examples of the local-led adaptation at the community level. Then we will have responses from 3 discussants, Karen Wong from IIED, and Mr. Brian Madamombe from the city of Masvingo in Zimbabwe, who work with our affiliate there, Dialogue on Shelter and the Zimbabwe People's Federation. Then we also have Saranjana Gupta, who is an advisor on climate issues with the Wairo Commission. And then we will have an opportunity to have comments, questions, and a discussion from attendance on the floor, and hopefully also get responses from our presenters. The showcases and examples from SDI will focus on the work in Malawi and Zimbabwe, the Philippines, and Sierra Leone. So thank you, and can I ask Happiness Zidana from SEACOD to come to the floor and speak to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Happiness Zidana with Center for Community Organization and Development as the programs officer. And today, if you allow me to just turn off video, because I think the internet is a bit unstable. All right, thank you. So yes, so this morning I'll be presenting on the Malawi Alliance's experience in organizing communities or informal settlements in the cities of Malawi to take lead in building their own resilience to climate change. Before introducing my presentation, I would like just to take you through Malawi's experience. Malawi has increasingly been exposed to extreme weather conditions, and I know that this is the experience that many countries are having due to climate change. And these effects continue to devastate human populations. And in the past in Malawi, the issues of floods were as an issue that usually were affecting the lower Chile. So the lower Chile is an area where the main river of Malawi, which is an outlet of Lake Malawi, is. So this outlet gives water into Zambezi River. So the terrain there, because it's flat, has always been flooding. But in the recent years, flooding has been a phenomenon for informal settlements. And poor communities in informal and low-income settlements in the cities of Blantyre, Lilongwe, Nzuzo, and Dizomba, they suffer most because the physical infrastructure of their neighborhoods do not withstand or cannot withstand such adversities. I think, as you can see the photo there, these houses are built just in the riverbank. This is in Ndilande informal settlement in Blantyre. And whenever there is a lot of heavy rains and flooding, you know that the effects, these households, their furniture is washed away, lives are lost. And another problem that is there is because there are urban planning failures. there is a scarcity of land in the cities, prompting people to live in very flood-prone areas. And these challenges are compounded in the fact that people that are in these informal settlements do not know the technical know-how, or they do not have the resources as well to prevent the risks of climate change related disasters. Now, since 2015, Center for Community Organization and Development, together with the Federation of the Rural and Urban Poor, which is an affiliate of the SDI, have been working on supporting these informal settlements to build their resilience, or the resilience to the growing effects of climate change. And since 2015, the SDI's work on urban resilience has been mainly on the capacitating the urban governance structures, building effective community structures that are able to quickly respond and help the community members to start adapting to changes due to climate change. We have also been supporting communities to create or to produce, to formulate strategies in disaster risk management. We have also undertaken projects, and we run programs where we support communities to enhance their infrastructure services, so that whenever there are issues to do with, so they are able to start adapting. SDI and the Federation program, where they build the informal economy adaptation to climate change. So just quickly, we have in 2018 we had we conducted a project. We ran a project under SDI where we called it Building Resilience for the Urban Poor in Disaster-Prone Areas. And this project had enabled targeted communities to develop the requisite skills so that they're able to mitigate the effects of disasters that are on the rise because of the climate change. And the project also focused on supporting the target communities to build strong partnerships with resource building authorities, government, other local authorities. And just last month, SDI has received funding from UN, CEDA through UN Habitat to undertake it's a very small project which is running for 4 months. We have started in March. We are going to finish in June. We are targeting 3 informal settlements in Lilongwe, and the project is about building resilience of informal settlements through nature-based solutions and biodiversity actions in Lilongwe. And the goal of the project is to pilot nature-based solutions and urban diversity actions. So these are some of the key activities that we are doing. But I want us to look at the key practices that SDI and the Federation in Malawi have been undertaking to support communities in Malawi, informal settlements in Malawi, to take lead, to be in the front when it comes to adaptation. So the first key work that we do, or is the best, we call it a best practice, is we use community evidence. I think this is the language of SDI, using community data for evidence-based adaptation. But this also depends on the acceptability of the data, because I think other affiliates will also agree with us. Sometimes when you generate community data, sometimes it is difficult for resource building authorities or government institutions to accept it. But it also takes what as an organization, or what organizations are doing in terms of advocacy, in terms of letting these institutions know the processes, because the data needs to be valid, the data needs to be usable to even people in the higher offices. So we continue to support communities to generate information they can use to make so that they can use to make better decisions on their resilience building. And we have been supporting communities to analyze their situation and from the data they have generated to start community-driven initiatives, so that they use it, the data, they should use it as a currency for engagement, because we believe that when you are negotiating with government institutions, you need to have enough information. So as you can see there, they have in this Ngona settlement is in Lilongwe city. This is an informal settlement that has mushroomed just near the Lilongwe industrial area, the Kanengwe industrial area. And there are a lot of people that continue to migrate from other districts of Malawi to this settlement in search of economic opportunities. So this is a Ngona settlement risk map. And the community, we supported the communities to identify the risks that are there, and we trained them so that they are able to look at the information and interpret it, so that when they are negotiating for resources or when they are making local initiatives to support them to deal with effects of climate change, they are using the evidence that is valid. The second key practice that we continue to enhance for local-led adaptation is building sustainable community financing models for community-led adaptations. And this is in line with local-led adaptation principle number 3 and number 7. So we support communities to set up what we call community managed funds, and we engage resource building authorities for more resources. So just last year, but we started working with Lilongwe City Council to support wards, 27 wards in Lilongwe City, to produce, to profile their settlements, to update the information that is already there, but to also produce ward development plans. And the Lilongwe City Council has, they have established what they're calling the Ward Development Fund, where only the wards, the informal settlements that have got that development plan will be able to access resources or finance from the fund. So SDI and the Federation have been working with the City Council in supporting the communities to build, apart from establishing their own community managed funds, where households, they make contributions, where community, their transparency and accountability platforms, where people need to know what the funds are being used for. People need to know that these resources are really being put into important use. So we have been supporting these informal settlements. In terms of managing the community managed fund, what we do is we build the capacity of informal the structures, so that they're able to manage the funds properly. And we also capacitate them with the skills, and we also support them with materials and some other accountability tools. For example, receipts that they give to households when they give money, and sometimes their community meetings. This is a practice that is we have supported in, for example, Nancholi in Blantyre City, but also in Senti formal settlement in Lilongwe, where community members have got books where they are able to see to showcase what they have been up to. Another important thing that SDI and the Malawi Federation have been undertaking is to it's a strategy that we are calling voice in the noise. This is in our 2021-2023 strategic plan. This is one of the strategies to achieve the goal outcomes that we are pursuing. So for us, voice in the noise, we mean empowering the target group to express their needs and to hold duty bearers to account. And voice in the noise, it transcends the mere expression of needs. It's not just about the community expressing what they need, but it's about critical engagement that questions the power, and it compels community, but also the resource building authorities to address the needs of the people. So it's about creating platforms where community members are able to using evidence to express their needs, and it's about responsiveness of the resource building authorities. So in Malawi, what we have noted so far is that we have noted that community members that are organized or groups that are organized, informal settlements that are organized, the response is much quicker. Unlike informal settlements where people are just not very organized. But when, for example, the local authorities see that this community is organized, their needs are responded to quickly. But if the community is also organized, they are able to within speak up. Even for us, voicing the noise also is about pushing local authorities to prioritize community identified lists. So from the data that they are collecting, they have.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you quickly wrap up so that we have time for others? We have gone over your time.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I think for the last the practice, a best practice is about building local capacities. So we, as the Malawi Alliance, we continue to focus on building capacities of various stakeholders at the community level, in different aspects. So it's about skills development, participatory planning, but also governance. So there are the various examples maybe we can share. We have good blogs where you can share where communities have their capacities in governance, in skills, in participatory planning have also been supported. All this in order to help them so that they can take lead or they can be in the front in climate change adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Happiness. I actually regret that time is very tight. That's a very interesting example you shared. Perhaps you could also share with your slides with others that might have come when you had already started your presentation. I am going to, lift my hand and then I'll put my hand up just to show you that you have like a minute or two to wrap up. So for the presenters that are coming up, I'm going to be very strict on time. So if you could please be as succinct as possible. Our next presenter is George Masimba from Dialogue on Shelter in Zimbabwe. Thank you. George, over to you. Doesn't look like he's here. So maybe, Ariana, can we move to Teresa and we can come back to George afterwards because I can't see him in the, he might not have.
I think he just has moved over to being a panelist. So maybe he should be able to speak now. George, are you here with us? I think he's connecting. Otherwise.
Hello,
George,
can you hear me?
There you are. Yes, now we can hear you.
Please go ahead, George, and I hope you heard my feel about time. I will be very steady with you. But you have 10 minutes. Over to you.
Sure, Beth. I'm checking my time. I will be done in 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm George Masimba from Dialogue on Shelter, an affiliate of SDI. We work as an alliance of Dialogue on Shelter, Zimbabwe Homeless People's Federation, and the Zimbabwe Young People's Federation. And that slide basically showing about who we are and also the work that we do. Basically, we are working mainly in urban slums, and our interventions aim to address a number of vulnerabilities that people living in slums encounter on a day-to-day basis, which end up deepening their urban poverty conditions and also worsening inequalities within the city. Next slide. So that slide speaks to the locally adaptation principles, which everyone who is on this platform is obviously familiar with. So I will not dwell on that one. Next slide. So basically, in terms of the work that we are doing as an alliance, we are looking at adaptation through the lens of informal settlement upgrading. So the work that we have been doing on informal settlement upgrading has supported or enabled to build resilient communities so that they can deal with the impacts of climate change. So how are we using or leveraging SDI tools for locally led climate actions within the context of our country? Firstly, we have been using community managed funds as catalytic and flexible tools for financing locally led adaptation actions. I will talk a bit more about this in the case study that I'm going to be using. Then secondly, through building women-led grassroots collectives to enable devolved decision-making around priorities for adaptation. And this obviously speaks to one of the first principles of the locally led adaptation actions. Then thirdly, peer-to-peer interactions between communities and city authorities, including the central government officials, are used to support or promote a culture of learning on climate change related risks and adaptation actions that communities would be implementing. Then community-led enumerations have been used to generate evidence for a robust understanding of climate risks and uncertainty. I'm Happiness also spoke to this point that as part of the SDI culture, we use data as an entry point to understanding issues to do with climate change, the kind of challenges that the communities are facing, and also using that very same data to empower communities and inform subsequent responses that then emerge out of these exercises. Then facilitating partnership arrangements between grassroots movements and stakeholders. I think basically what we are doing as SDI is that we realize that there is great need for building collaborations or networking between communities and the state. This is crucial because the actions that communities are undertaking in response to climate change risks need to be scaled, need to be connected with what the state is doing, both at the central and local government level. And on the basis of that thinking, we then promote or facilitate building of collaborative arrangements with either the city authorities or central government as a way of also even leveraging resources that are available sometimes at the local government level. Next slide. So this slide is speaking to the issues of community managed funds that we use, that I referred to earlier. And in particular, I will focus on the Gungano Urban Poor Fund, which is a national fund that has been established by the Alliance as a way of providing flexible financing arrangements for locally led climate actions. So how does the Gungano Fund contribute towards locally led climate actions within the context of Zimbabwe? Gungano Fund is resourced by the urban poor communities, giving them a stake in decision making. So besides providing a pool of resources, the fund also acts as a mechanism for improving governance process, for building or promoting inclusive governance arrangements that allow communities to be involved in decision making. Then, in addition, the fund is also locally managed, enabling prompt disbursement of resources for climate change related actions. And this is very key because climate emergencies will require, in most of the instances, very swift decisions to be made. And when you have a fund that is
I think we have lost George. George? We can't-
localized or that is situated in fast decision making so that communities can. Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can, but we lost you briefly.
Okay, so I was just saying the logic around having a locally managed fund enables very swift decisions being made in the light of emergency situations that are normally generated or triggered by climate related challenges. Then the fund also provides a range of loans that are then used as part of financing the locally led adaptation actions. And in this particular case, this may even refer to slum upgrading interventions. Then the fund also acts as a tool for enabling building of collaborations with the state. Essentially, here what we are saying is that communities are coming to the state with some resources that they own themselves. Instead of coming to the state with nothing, they sit on the table in negotiations for services with that element of power through the resources that they've contributed. Next slide. Then how are we using slum upgrading as part of a strategy for promoting adaptation actions? I'll use the case study from one of the pilots in Harare, where basically slums, we have noticed through experience that they experience serious deprivations in terms of basic infrastructure, and that exposes them to climate change related risks. So slums eventually experience disproportionate impacts of climate change. The Zimbabwean SDI Alliance has been promoting slum upgrading as a way of extending basic services so that we can build resilient communities that are able to withstand, for example, in instances of floods, instances of droughts, with interventions around water, for example, construction of bores, building of water tanks, installation of stormwater drains, building of ecological sanitation toilets, which are waterless. So if you closely look at all those interventions, they are designed in such a way that communities are able to cope with the emergencies that happen that are related to climate change risks. For example, flooding with stormwater drains, it helps communities to manage the risks that are associated with flooding in their communities. And then the use of bores in instances where we have episodes of droughts, communities are able to rely on underground water sources where cities can't provide reticulated water through the centralized water facilities. Next slide.
Wrap up, George. You have less than
Thank you,
a minute.
Next slide. Next slide again. So those are some of the interventions: transitional housing, bore facilities, and some of the conditions in informal settlements where roads are eroded as a result of the absence of stormwater drains. Next slide. Next slide on lessons. So what are the lessons that we have learned from these experiences with respect to locally led adaptation actions in Harare. Firstly, we have learned that community-led financing instruments are very crucial. They are important, but there's also a requirement for bigger resources for us to be able to scale and sustain these interventions. Then secondly, environmentally fragile sites allocated to the urban poor end up compounding adaptation strategies. And then locally led climate actions should be anchored on robust strengthening of local structures, for instance, communities and non-governmental organizations and city government on the change intersections with wider development process. Then lastly, mechanisms for routinely collecting and processing data on climate change risk and vulnerabilities is key. And this speaks to the issue of the routine community-led data collection processes that I referred to earlier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. I like how fast your thank you was. Thank you for trying to speed up your presentation and for the lessons that are coming out of your work in Zvarasekwa Extension. I think also as with the Malawi presentation, it would be very helpful if you can share with your presentation, at least within the network, and any of the other participants here who may be interested can put their emails in the chat box, and we can try and get the presentations over to them. Next, we have Teresa. And Teresa, again, I'm being very strict on time. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Teresa from the Philippines, affiliated with Slum Dwellers International. I'm a part of the Homeless People's Federation Philippines. This slide shows who we are and the network that composes the federation all over Manila, Cebu, Davao, and Iloilo. Since Happiness and George have talked about the details of the strategies of SDI, I will not dwell on that anymore. Okay, so basically using the data to negotiate with the local government, knowing establishing the relationship between informal settlements so that they can negotiate better to the government, using the savings as a platform to empower the communities to be at the decision, to be part of the decision making is the same strategy that we're doing. So I will just give you two examples of a community which was affected by climate change in the Philippines, and using their savings and using their internal capacity collectively to negotiate with the local government to address the issues of climate change. Okay, for the number one community is in Valenzuela. Actually, both communities are from Valenzuela. This one is United Bibis, HOA, which is located in Canumay East, Valenzuela. It is a flood-prone area. If you can see here, this is a map showing 10 years ago. This is an agricultural area before. But right now, the whole area is industrialized. So before, we don't have problems in flooding because the surface runoff water just flow from this side of the area to this side of the area. But 10 years ago, the community is frequently submerged in water because of the development surrounding the area, which keeps the water inside the settlements, inside this settlement, and the flooding goes up to 3 meters to 10 meters deep of water. So if you will see the effects of the flooding every now and then, you will see the impact of the typhoons and the floods in the community. So this area is under a transmission line. This is a high tension wire. So just imagine how the danger that the community is undergoing during typhoons and other disasters. So this floods damage their property and livelihood every rainy season, sometimes 5 times or more than 5 times in a year. But in 2018, the community was able to connect with the local government to set up this flood control project. So the community was able to negotiate with the local government, but the important thing here is that the local government did not have any cannot intervene with the community unless they were able to pay the land, because in the Philippines you cannot develop a land that is not in your property. So the community used their savings to purchase the land and access a loan from the government, and then the local government was able to now decide and support the community in constructing this flood control project. So right now it has been 2-3 years that the flood in the community is not experienced. We're not experiencing flooding anymore. The next case is the Rosario Compound, which is located in Coloong. This is an area also in Valenzuela. Before, it is a rice land, and they were able to plant vegetables in this area, but right now it is totally submerged in water because of the sea level rise. So as you can see, the community is the houses are on stilts. It is actually a less than 1 hectare community. I'm so sorry. But the community, using their savings, was able to purchase the land in 2013. But it is still submerged in water. But yeah, before it's not. It's completely dry, and it's an agricultural area. Using their savings and using their connection with the government, their partnership with the government, they were able to build this something, sort of a bridge to just so that the community community people can enter, can go out and in the community. So right now the community is accessing a support for land filling of the community, so that they can be they can build on the area, because in the Philippines there's a law that if your land is submerged in water, it is considered actually a danger area. So they cannot access a loan from the government, or the government, even Valenzuela City, is not supporting them on building their houses here. But the community have shown from 1960s to up to this day that they can develop their own initiatives, and they can build capacity to overcome the challenges of climate change. If only government can support, and if only the network and other institutions can support them, then we believe that that the solution of the people is much better than just evicting them from the places where they live. So
You have 2 minutes, Teresa. You have 2 minutes.
yeah. So I think I would just like to emphasize that building capacity actually is not just doing project. It's not just building flood control projects, or building a dam or whatever, or a water filtration, or water so that the water level will not enter the community. But in our experience, resilience building comes from land ownership, because if you don't own the land, if the community do not own the land that they are living in, the government, other institutions, and even the community will not cannot fund for their resilience activities. There are a lot of what do you call this? There are a lot of push and pull, whether to build something, or just demolish this area, or just transfer to another area. So it must the first decision, really, if you want to build adaptation, resilience within the community, you really have to support the community to establish their ownership, or put a certain level of security of tenure in the community, so that they can build upon that those resources, and then develop the capacity of the community to address resiliency, and be able to adapt in all the impacts of climate change later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. You almost you were just 30 seconds above your time. And very interesting example again of what the federations are doing at the local level. It would also be good if you can share your presentation, so that people that haven't had the opportunity to listen can have those details. I also just realized that there's also a function called Q&A on in the chat if anyone has questions, either to specific presenters or to everyone in the meeting. You can put your questions there, and someone will respond, but also perhaps that we have a record of those. Next, and our final presentation from the SDI affiliates, we move to Sierra Leone. Francis, over to you, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Beth. Good day, everyone. I'm Francis Refu, the founder and director of Center of Dialogue on Human Settlement and Poverty Alleviation, Kurusapa. And we and the Federation of Urban and Rural Poor are part of the SDI network. So we are the Sierra Leone Alliance. Next slide, please. Right. I don't want to bore you with all of these narratives here. Maybe let's go to the next slide, since I'm really pressed for time. Right. Okay. This just gives a kind of conceptual frame of the previous. So what I did actually is to give a background of the climate issues that we are grappling with in Freetown, in Sierra Leone, but Freetown specifically. And of course, the SDI Alliance here is established in various parts of the country, but a greater proportion is concentrated here in Freetown. And so most of our work that we do, are being led by the Federation. And also to let you know that my presentation actually tried to measure on how communities are partnering with the local and state government to be able to lead on, or to be able to leverage on those kind of relationships to drive local-led adaptation practices. So within the Freetown context, no, back to that point. The same slide. Hello, can we just go back? Ariana? All right, so you can see that the presentation is given about the climate drivers, what are the effects, and what are we doing conceptually, and what are we trying to arrive at the end of the day. Of course, this frame actually was developed in collaboration, the relationship, based on the relationship between the Freetown State Council and the Federation. All right, next slide. So I'll just give you, as I mentioned, very practical examples of what we are doing, or the Federation or communities are doing. So firstly, the Federation have organized community-based disaster management committees, which is established across Freetown in 68 informal settlements, and they have gained recognition from the Freetown State Council, as well as the National Disaster Management Agency. And so these institutions actually work directly with these committees in the communities. And they involve, as part of, as the other speakers said, they are involved in a lot of hazard mapping work, settlement profiling, and mapping of settlements. I mean, these inform most of the actions that they do, and also to be able to strengthen their voice. They also serve as first responders during disasters, especially flooding, fire outbreaks, and rockfalls. And I'm sure most of you are aware that quite recently we're experiencing a lot of recurrent disaster issues, namely flooding and floods and landslides. I mean, you hear about the famous 2017 landslide that we experienced in Freetown. They also record health and social hazards. I mean, we have developed a locally customized app that we call FISCOVID Data that was actually working to, record COVID issues and other social issues, including recording of disaster occurrences. I mean, this idea came with COVID because we are regulated to ensure that we ensure physical distancing. So we felt one way that communities can inform their partners or government agencies is through the use of this app. And so this CDMC worked with local authorities to enforce government regulations They also drive mass sensitization and a lot of awareness raising. And they organize drainage clearing and community cleaning. You know, I mean, if you look at the climate drivers, as well as the effects, one of the things that happens is that most of our drains are clogged. And so when it rains, because the drains are clogged, then it mostly results to flooding within the informal settlements. And also, when like at the peak of the COVID, I mean, FCC had to partner with these committees to do community kitchens that actually met the needs of people with disability, orphans, and the aged. Next slide, please. Well, are we there yet? Oh, great. All right, so another action that they are doing is framed within the current hashtag Free Town the Tree Town campaign. Somebody mentioned that government institutions, local or state, look for organized community groupings. And so because Free Town City Council realized how organized, you know, and present is the federation within these informal settlements, when they came up with this campaign, they have to bring on board the federation to actually drive the community actions. And so one of it is that they have recruited 133 fed-up members, and they are planting trees in the coastal front as well as the hillside areas. And they are also using the federation themselves. I mean, part of this campaign have developed a tree tracker app to be able to monitor the grain process. So it is those people that are actually involved directly in this, this work. And so they are working towards building an inventory of the Freetown urban forest. The key driver of climate stresses actually is around the issue of deforestation. So the reason why this project was developed to ensure that we are forests, I mean, the hillside as well as the coastal areas. And of course, as part of it, it is also creating green circular jobs for these informal settlers because of the role they are playing as planters as well as growers, and those monitoring through the tracking process. Next slide, please. All right, now another action is over time, as we have realized that in trying to strengthen those community actions and also to be able more to engage more on the climate change effects, the Federation has established about 1,225 residents as community-based climate change ambassadors. I mean, these are now being recognized by Freetown City Council and the National Protected Area Authority, which is a state agency. And so they are working in partnership to do a number of things, like to do awareness raising campaigns, to support community leaders to enforce bylaws. I mean, it is hinged on the mantra of the Federation itself, that we are the problems and we are the solution. So, I mean, sometimes law enforcement is not really part of, the Federation, but they have realized that if they don't work with the local authorities to actually enforce those regulations, then the situation of the climate effects continues going to, affect them gravely. And so they are collaborating on that. Another one is, which is part of the normal SDI practice.
Sorry,
Yes,
Francis, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. So another one is the community savings, which resilience, and as a fallback, even in times of, disaster occurrence, as well as, to finance water services and also operate loans and schemes. Next slide, please. Whoa, it's pretty slow. All right, great. So another action is Federation is involved in urban agriculture. which is part of greening the environment, but at the same time providing food shortage, because within the urban center, they are heavily dependent on the rural agricultural products. And so it came at the time of the COVID that there was food shortage. So this idea of getting involved in urban farming became a very needed intervention. Let's go to the next slide. And of course, they also have been partnering with the FCC on the slum regeneration to do community engagement, do housing modeling, and also do community action planning. I mean, it's an initiative that has been done by the FCC to be able to pilot regeneration of 2 informal settlements. Next slide. I don't know if this final one, I guess.
I'm up, but please wrap up, Francis.
All right, yes. So is there another slide? Or this is the final one, Ariana? All right. I think that's the final one.
That was it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. That was really interesting. Especially, I was quite it's thought-provoking getting communities to enforce bylaws. I think that could be a very interesting conversation for communities. So these are, Francis was the final presentation from our affiliates. I'm sure there are comments. If you can just keep those for our session where we will have comments and questions. But we now move to our discussants. Discussants, you have about 5 minutes. I'm slightly flexible, but you have about 5 minutes in which to give us your comments. What we are hoping you could focus your discussion on is 3 key questions. What you think are the key lessons for development agencies in the cases that have been presented, and how grassroots communities can advance their efforts to make to scale up and make greater impact, and how governments can better position themselves to partner with local communities. Of course, you have a leeway to bring in other perspectives. Yeah, thank you. We will start with Karen Wong Perez from IIED. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Beth, and thanks for having me. That was fascinating hearing from grassroots federations on the ground on the experience of locally led adaptation. So some reflections and responding to the question, I see that across the 4 case studies presented, there are some commonalities from which we can extract some lessons. One of these lessons is that we see the power of community organizing, and I see that very clearly linked to the locally led adaptation principle number 2 of addressing structural inequalities, which are at the root of vulnerability to climate and other risks. And the 4 case studies shared how the power of community organizing was able to overcome power and resources inequality by fostering equitable partnerships. And I see that there are 2 main interacting processes that are central for this community organizing, and those, it seems to me, that are consistent across the 4 cases. From one side is the process of building community agency by collecting community data for evidence-based adaptation, hazard mapping, settlement profiling, which are very valuable and very needed information that is hyper-localized and very actual information for effective decision-making. And Happiness in Malawi, George in Zimbabwe share the role of community data for engaging with the local organizations, with local authorities. Francis in Sierra Leone as well. He mentioned the role of environmental hazard mapping for decision making. And at the same time, we see this process interacting with community savings groups, with the process of forming community savings groups, sustainable community financing models as a way to nurture these horizontal trust relationships and communication channels within the community, but also that can engage with other duty bearers. So combining those two processes, grassroots organizations are able, and people at the local level are able to aggregate priorities and then engage in a more leveled playing field and foster equitable partnerships between grassroots movements and stakeholders, duty bearers and donors. And Teresa showed us through the case in Venezuela City the importance of land ownership and the role of partnering with government to collaboratively design, planning and manage risks. So a key aspect is that these processes allow grassroots federations to never enter any kind of relationships empty-handed, but with the power and legitimacy that brings an organized community with trusted communication channels and community generated data. So that devolves or restores the equality in these trusted relationships, and it enables also shifting the perceptions of legitimacy of the community data. And having established these trusted relationships with local authorities, then all the flow of information and resources can be more efficient for improved decision-making and coordinated multi-scale response. And that's the third element, I think, in the process, the co-governance of risk responses, as in the example of the Gungano Urban Poor Fund described by George, which mentions or describes very elegant collaborative governance arrangements that are as a result of this process. So these are the lessons that I got from the case studies, and responding to what are the key lessons for development organizations. One is that it's central, the centrality of community organizing processes, collecting data, community groups, savings groups. This nested process bring legitimacy to decision making, and it starts with building the capacity and confidence of people with very small groups that have dialogues, and then they can articulate better their interests, their vision. And the second lesson is that these processes take time and are slow, but they're very, very important. And I remember a while ago I had a conversation with Silvio Luca, and he said, it takes time, and sometimes bringing one or two community members is called community participation, and that it's not. What we need is to make sure that the voice and interest of every individual in the community are heard, but this takes time, and we need to be very, very, very considerate of that if we really want participation, that is, we need to make the effort and ensure that that we have participation rather than representation. And I see that I have 5 minutes, and I can stop there and add some comments afterwards.
Thank you very much, Karen, and for being right on time. Very interesting insights you have shared there. Next, we move to Mr. Brian Madamombe. I don't know, Ms. Madamombe, if you can put your video on so we can at least see you. Ms. Madamombe is the Environmental Health Officer from the city of Masvingo in Zimbabwe. Over to you, sir.
Hello.
Yes,
Hello,
we can hear you. We can hear
thank you. I don't know if the video is also working. I'm sorry, Mr. Madamombe did not prepare much for this presentation, but I was here following up. I didn't get much time. I just took in Mr. Gobeshona has been committed to some other proceedings by the work, so he asked me to represent him here. So I've been following up the presentation, and maybe on the lessons from this. Yes, we're working with Mr. George and Dialogue and Shelter in quite a number of items with our community here. That also covers issues of climate change as well. The Masingo city is one of the, it's actually one of the first cities in our Masingo. Like in other cities, we do have some areas where we do, that are the first locations, the first residential areas that were first developed when the cities were, when the area was developed into maybe some urban areas. So we do have some challenges there with that is when we do have some slums. So we actually appreciate the work that is being done by the Dialogue and Shelter. They took a long way with us here. Ever since 1998 up to now, maybe we happen now to start working with them seriously from 2019, when we had formulate some community groups and get into some massive trainings of the community. After also maybe convincing the management, the city council management, to look into the issues of the urban poor, who have been who have not been attended to for quite a long time. But the coming in of the Dialogue and Shelter, it formed us a very good way and a platform where we now happen to engage these people, and also to come to realize to say they are the people who also need attention within the cities. So from now, we do have some new settlements that were just that were developed. Like normally the government says for every location to be habitable, or maybe for people to construct their houses, they have to provide some reticulated water and some municipal sewage works channels for people for those areas to be inhabitable. So with this urbanization, with this increase in urbanization, where the city just happened to grow up recently from 2008 onwards, there are some locations where people just went on to peg for some stands and then started to develop. So there were no reticulated sewer systems. So the coming in of Dialogue started by teaching the communities and developing those eco-centers that have been alluded to by Dr. Masimba before. And then they engaged into training and mobilizing quite a number of resources, and also engaging with city management for them to appreciate the need to assist these people in such areas. So that is when we started to engage into some groups, and then we also discovered there were already some groups that were already the Federation, the Homeless People's Federation, who had already been in an advanced stage in raising and mobilizing some funds for developing their livelihoods and the like. So by as they engaged the city management, the city came to an extent whereby they actually now started to formulate or make a budget for what we called city fund, which is where now the council is actually donating, budgeting and setting aside some finance to help together with the urban poor, joining hand in hand with the gunganos that we have heard from Dr. Masimba. We've now moved into working to the upgrading of slums. So for now, we upgraded about 5 hostels. It's unfortunate that I didn't prepare the slides, otherwise I could be sharing the slides of the hostels that we did upgrade. The first ones, we did them, the city council on its own, but the idea had been brought by Dialogue on Shelter, but along the way, their finance to partner in the upgrading were quite delayed by their process, but the council had already budgeted for that. So the council went on to move on to start the upgrading. So the council did the first 2 hostels before Dialogue and Shelter came in. After that, the Dialogue now came in. I don't know whether people are hearing me.
We are hearing you, Mr. Madamumbe, but that alarm was my alarm telling you your 5 minutes was up. Could you wrap up, say? But thank you so much for also presenting the local authority perspective to these issues. I don't know if you would like to just wrap up your discussion.
Okay, just wrapping up. Okay, so we're saying that one of the lessons now, there's been an issue of ownership that has been said, which I see and feel that is one thing that also we need now to consider as we upgrade these slums. Normally, people don't put much effort on premises or buildings where they sort of their tenants. But it did mean that they give an opportunity for ownership of such things. They are likely to develop and work well. With those and other partners, they also moved in to train the communities in many other aspects of with some community health clubs, where they train people. Like you see in these settlements, there's a lot of refuse or general waste that is being generated. So without proper education, you would find that these waste will actually be dumped or deposited into maybe into the waterways, or end up clogging the drainage systems. And after that, when the rains come now, that is when we would actually have some flash floods affecting or even getting into the houses in this slum. So we are moving quite well in trying to ensure that people are educated educated in that manner. We did also in terms of COVID. It was also the time of COVID, so we also took part to educate the communities in COVID prevention and awareness. I think that is all I can say for now. I'm sorry I didn't prepare for this quite well. I did not have enough time to prepare. Otherwise, we could have shared a lot of things.
Thank you very much for that, and also I think giving us an additional focus on another city and work for the SDI affiliates with the local authorities. We now move to Suranjana. Suranjana, over to you, and you have 5 minutes. You are muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Beth, and thank you so much to SDI for inviting me to this forum. And I have to say, it's really educational for me to learn how much communities that we work with are doing to actually address the problems of climate change. And often just because people don't themselves frame these their own accomplishments as being part of adapting to climate change or reducing risks, we don't really understand, through the lens of climate change, how much they're doing. So I wanted to offer a few reflections. First of all, it's very clear that the work that local communities are doing are very much connected to the locally led adaptation principles. I won't go through them in detail, but you saw the way in which groups have talked about their ability to collect local data and map. They talked about community funds, which is part of the LLA principle around patient predictable funds. They have talked about collaborative work. They've talked about building an institutional legacy through building capacities of local groups. So there are a number of different things. And I think what I want to kind of just stop for a moment and reflect on the settlement map that I think it was Happiness from Malawi who showed that map, and she had listed a number of challenges on the side. And there were a range of challenges that went from waste disposal to crime and prostitution and the lack of decent infrastructure and housing quality. Now, I think what is important to understand is that communities are dealing with a basket of risks. And these risks may emanate from anywhere, not specifically from climate change. Nevertheless, what happens is that these create challenges which make communities much more vulnerable to the impacts of disasters. So for example, when you have a lot of fragmentation and crime in the communities, it's difficult to organize them to function collectively to solve the problem. It erodes the sort of social capital and trust, which is important, and of course creates tensions with government invariably. So even issues that look like they're very disconnected from climate change, in fact, have a big impact on communities and their capacities to deal with climate change. And then we have to look at the ways in which communities are building their capacities to reduce vulnerabilities from that perspective. So when you look at, Karen talked about being organized. Organizing is to build consensus and help different disparate groups and individuals come together around a common shared understanding of what needs to be done to help them take action, building relationships and trust with government, building local capacities to solve problems, having your own funds which can help you respond rapidly to different kinds of problems. So I think that for me is one important piece of this discussion. The other is this notion that a lot of this discussion has to be centered on development, because you can see again from the discussion that development can be something that exacerbates vulnerabilities. We saw, I think it was the first presentation, right, from I think Malawi, where she talked about the flooding which worsened because of construction around a certain settlement. So it went from 1 meter to 6 meters. So in many cities and many locations, we actually are experiencing not only increased rainfall in shorter periods as a result of climate change, but also the way the infrastructure is built up is causing increased flooding, usually in the most marginalized settlements who don't have any kind of voice in decision-making processes to prevent this kind of development, which ends up putting them in a more vulnerable position. And on the other hand, we also saw in the Philippines how they constructed a footbridge to help communities move from one part to the other and improve their access to different parts of the community. So development can be both something that reduces vulnerability, but it can also be something that increases vulnerability. The other piece around development is that for communities, the everyday survival, the everyday development problems are very much in the foreground of their experience. And so invariably they prioritize those. So where you see community solutions really working, you can see that they are bundling together an everyday problem which they have to solve along with adapting to climate change or disaster risk. And the other piece around this development is that in order for communities to collaborate with government in the context of climate adaptation or anything, they have to keep collaborating and learn how to collaborate and go through many iterations of learning and partnership and trust building. And that often starts outside of the climate change arena and in the development space, and we have to keep learning from that. So I only want to emphasize this point that it doesn't matter where the risks are emanating from or where the resources come from or where the learning comes from. What we need to do is be organized to pull together that experience, the resources, the learning and the knowledge and the, you know, an understanding of risk and apply it to development in a way that development has to be risk informed, in a way that we understand, we have an understanding of future risks which climate change is bringing, and be prepared to have sort of flexible systems and approaches that can quickly move into dealing with new kinds of crises which we may or may not have had the experience of dealing with before. And I think just the last point I'll add is that the question on what can governments do, I think we heard here already that, was it the presentation from Sierra Leone where the gentleman talked about appointing climate ambassadors, making community leaders into climate ambassadors, and how that was being formally recognized by the municipal council and by another government agency as well. So this is the kind of an example where we are saying that when governments start to formally recognize and acknowledge the expertise, the role of local community groups and grassroots organizations. In our own network in the Vairo Commission, we've seen governments appointing women as trainers or women as information disseminators. It both positions that group very differently. It gives them a new status, it acknowledges their leadership, it empowers them, while at the same time, it creates a more effective, efficient system where those leaders are reaching out to their peers to create this transformational process that is required in order to combat the ill effects of climate change. So let me stop over there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarajna and our fellow discussants for those very insightful comments. We have about 30 minutes left. We would like to just have a plenary discussion to give the rest of our participants an opportunity to comment, to ask questions, and please also continue to use the Q&A chat line if you have any specific comments or questions to ask. We can only take so many, so I would ask people to be succinct and to be mindful also to give others an opportunity. If you can raise your digital hand, I'll come to you, introduce yourself, and then make your comment. Thank you. Celine, you are
Thank you, Beth. Maybe I can wait. Is that okay if somebody else wants to come in?
No, you are
the community side
at the moment.
Okay. No, it's very interesting for me because I've been sitting through many sessions and I'm watching what's coming out. And I'm beginning to create my own theory of separating survival skills from resilience skills and those kind of capacities. And it'll be very good to, just put this across to you all because I'm just jotting down notes. And one is the survival skills normally comes up during a specific crisis. Like I have only experienced evictions and I have to some extent experienced other kinds of natural things. And it is a big challenge for community leaders who deal with this on a very individual basis. So that's the first thing. So one is a crisis that you're dealing with during a crisis, and resilience is you have to build that capacity when it's not really a crisis. But it's cumulative crisis that actually made to create resilience or not. Then it's very individual focused, your survival skill, because you're just protecting, your family and your wife and your children. Whereas in resilience, you move beyond your family. You build a capacity to support other families in the community and more communities in your city, right? So that's the second thing. And that's how you build your own resilience when you start doing that. The third thing is the primary focus is on a very specific crisis. So you just deal with your eviction. Then the next thing you deal in the monsoons with your one flood. Then you deal with the next typhoon. You're not able to connect the dots because basically you have no platform or learning experience, shared learning experience to do that. The most obvious thing is when you're surviving, you're very disempowered. I remember a lady on the streets of Bombay, each time she saw police, even when there was no eviction, she just shiver. So it becomes a very traumatic individual experience. And that same thing, when it becomes a shared experience, is very empowering. And that is resilience. Some individuals and survivors, you also have inequity. Some survivors are better than other survivors. And it depends on your own capacity to what you can negotiate with your local politicians, what deals you have on the side. And we are all familiar with that, right? So there are some survivors better than other survivors. That doesn't make everybody in the community equal. So understanding those nuances is important. The element of, like Karen said, equity is extremely important to me. So while there is a notional idea that everybody is equal, at least among people like us and the community, my own experience shows us there's a huge disparity, even with change agents and community leaders. And, being very conscious of that, being aware of that it contributes to the survival and resilience issues. The more an NGO makes them, dependent on them, the less they're going to be able to build their own resilience. And we've all seen that, and we have lots of examples of that. In the survival thing, very loose strategies, you go from crisis to crisis and you develop certain survival skills just for that particular crisis. So in the evictions, you will learn, for example, how to throw chili powder in the eyes of a police. And then when you become resilient, you don't no more have to do that, because you now have your network. You feel so empowered that even if you have an eviction, you still feel empowered because you can take that learning to the next level and support other communities. In survival issues, and when you're just purely surviving, it's very, they're very primary relationships, you and the police, you and the ward officer, you and, an official or the NGO person. When you build resilience, your own capacity to deal with complex relationships really increase. My last one, Beth, sorry, I know you're looking at your watch. Yeah, and so that's the difference. So when you're unorganized, you basically survive. When you're organized, you become more resilient. That's it. This is just my reflection.
I just want to check, can attendants raise their hands, because I'm not familiar with these panelist attendants.
Yes, I believe they can. And then I can give them like speaking permissions once they've raised their hand. Yeah. Someone, there is a hand up now. A couple. Oh wait, one.
Okay, Chika, would you like to go ahead? I think that's the one. They are disappearing. I saw them and then
I know.
They what's
Evans
happening.
also. Did you want to speak, Evans, or there was someone named
So
Chika?
I saw Chika first, then Evans can come after. But maybe Ariana, if you can just take a watch that, so we don't lose anyone. So Chika, is over to you, succinct and brief. You are muted, Chika. You are muted. Okay, maybe Evans, would you like to go ahead? You are.
Okay, thank you, Beth, and a big thank you to the presenters. Quite informative and good reflections. I think perhaps from a local-led perspective, I think the issue is how do we crack the issue of scaling up, getting the effective structures in terms of the government of the local authorities coming on board, and also participating, understanding the local-led initiatives. I'm saying this, I think from a slum upgrading perspective, the whole idea of putting infrastructure is then getting the local authority participation and then obviously linking the initiatives into the municipal grid. But I think that is yet also to materialize when you look at climate change, local-led adaptation initiatives that are being taken by the communities. It remains an afterthought. And I think more oftenly with, there's also some disconnect between the local authorities and the other legal frameworks with regards to climate change. Possibly, I think in Zimbabwe, I'm not sure in other countries whether it is the case, that the local authorities, the primary land administrator and planner, and then there is the other created parastatals or department that look on climate change. And then how do we reconcile the two organizations in terms of the activities, and where do we fit the local lead adaptation in all this puzzle becomes something tricky. So I think as we proceed, it might be quite interesting to see how we can use the local lead adaptation to catalyze getting more attention of the state. I think in terms of scaling up, mainly what George is emphasizing around scaling up the initiative so that it spans wider with other communities and also getting into the systems and getting embraced by the city itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evans, for that. One area that we had hopes that we could discuss was how this discussion and this conversation can help us advance locally led adaptation as we move to COP27 or any proposed actions between now and then for this particular community that has taken an interest in this, but also the other partnerships that are out there where local communities are trying to move this agenda around locally led adaptation. I see John Miller, you have your hand up. Please go ahead. John Miller.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I really want to thank everyone here, and I really want to thank the convener of this great meeting talking about climate and its effects. It is very paramount to discuss such thing and how to tackle it in our environment and surroundings. It's so quite unfortunate that talking about recycling of waste bin, particularly plastic materials and all the rest, in Port Harcourt, it is very succinct that these are what causes blockage in the drainage, more in the surrounding, in our surrounding, because we lack this device using recycling this waste, and it is just there causing nuisance, public nuisance. So I would really advise the SDI to put more concentration in Port Harcourt Nigerian Federation, how they can provide this machine to this recycling machine and recycling waste bin, because it's composed, around 90% of deaths or waste in the environment is plastic. And if we have this recycling machine in Port Harcourt Nigerian Federation in particular, it will reduce this waste. It will reduce the waste at least to 30%, because that is what has been causing nuisance flooding in our areas, because we lack this machine, this amenity.
Thank you very much, John, for that. Ariana, we have Sydney, and then I'll just take one last comment, and then we move on to our closing remarks. So over to you, Sydney. Sydney, you have permission to talk.
Yes.
And please.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you loud and clear.
All right. First of all, I want to thank everybody for this great opportunity, this platform for us to discuss a way forward on how to get a better environment. We all know that for a very long time now, Port Harcourt has been polluted in the air because of this bushfire of 18. You know, and thanks to the government that made efforts in tackling that, but it has not been resolved. So how do we here help in resolving these issues? That is why the park is there. In every programs that the government are bringing up, that is why we have the park department. We have to be there to make our own contributions, to make sure that it impacts positively on the communities. Because our environment, if you live in Port Harcourt and you put your hands in your nose now, as it is, you will see black soot everywhere. It affects us even in our houses, even in your sleep, which can cause cancer in the future. It has affected a lot of us, especially the children. The air is polluted. How do we resolve this? That is why the park, we need to reconvene a meeting in our office to discuss a way forward. And also talking about the
Sydney, I'm sorry to cut you. The organizers are telling us that we are running over time, but thank you so much. If you are part of the SDI network, I think we can continue these conversations. Sheila, I would like to invite you to give us the closing remarks, and apologies everyone. Apparently 2 hours is not that long when you are having such an interesting conversation. So over to you, Sheila.
Thank you, Beth. This has been an amazing and a process that could actually go on for a whole day, the way we go. So first thing I want to say to all of us who are in SDI, we can have 15 such conversations on the list of things that we have done and demonstrate not only to ourselves, but to everybody else, the amazing transformation, like Celine said, from being survivalists to being innovators and transformers. And I think that SDI should feel very proud of this and should be able to make this contribution to strengthen our own network, but also do it with many other people. There are very few organizations working in the urban space with slum dwellers, and I think we have a role and a contribution there, both to strengthen ourselves internally and expand, but also to do it with others. The two things that we need to work on, which we did not discuss here in the LLA process, is that the biggest challenge in the resources is that adaptation has not enough money, and the money which is there doesn't come to people who need it the most, who are vulnerable and who need to take action and make investments. SDI has already made some very amazing breakthroughs of being able to obtain resources and then pass it on to national and local affiliates to do all the amazing innovative things that we have done. And a lot of our work has also shown that it has leveraged 5 to 15 times that amount by getting more local and national resources using the demonstration that we have done. And I think this is a very important contribution that we have to bring to the LLA space, because there are not enough organizations that can give the kind of money that is needed when it's needed for what it is done, measure it and bring it back. And I think all of us who are grassroots networks have to do that. The LLA space also lacks more voices from our constituency talking directly to bilateral, multilateral, and other donors who have become part of our of the LLA principle sign-offs. And I think that between, to answer your question of what do we do between now and the next COP, we need to engage them, not when they invite us, but when we invite them to say, these are the challenges of poor people. This is the data that they have. These are the solutions that they have. And this is the volume of money we need. Now, what do you need to change to make that money accessible so that both you and we can accomplish something that we can talk? Because in the last COP, everybody only talked about talk and not about doing things. And finally, I think the last IPCC report talked about the challenges of not looking at the adaptation challenges that mitigation projects bring up, and that is displacement. And SDI has a lot of experience on how our communities have faced amazing hardships because of large projects done in the name of mitigation. And Beth, I would urge us to pull that information together, because what is important also for us to do is our work in development and our work on climate change are not two different things. They are the same thing, but they have now to be seen from a climate lens so that we don't make mistakes in doing investments that are not good for us and not good for the climate. So I'm very excited with this initiative. I hope that we continue to have these events. We set them up. We have a very large network of the LLA community and many others who will participate in this. And I think that we have a lot to contribute to this process. Every example that was given today can be multiplied by 100 by other communities. And we have a responsibility to explore that and to make that happen. So congratulations. And I hope that we continue this and that we pursue and make other duty bearers accountable to communities that are seeking to be resilient and extend their hands in partnership. So thank you very much and congratulations again.